So North Americans clock in somewhere between 36 and 47 hours each week. And if we're not in an office, we're still connected and responding to emails after work hours. Work has a hold on us to the point where we often joke about having work husbands or work wives and work families. Add to this that productivity numbers have been going up, 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 while employee salaries have sort of remained fairly stagnant. Now we're working more, earning less, and doing our best to navigate a whole new world of work. I'm Ivana Taylor. I'm the publisher of DIY Marketers and the host of Bizapalooza Chat. And today we're going to talk about how to manage relationships at work. So our guest today is Mark Carruthers, Principal and Senior Consultant with AVGI Management. Welcome, Mark. It is so great to have you with us today.
Well, I'm pleased to have been invited, and I'm just going to say that's AVG, which is Greek for dawn.
AVG. Thank you.
AVG.
Because I saw somebody ask on Twitter, is that something you pronounce? Like, how do you pronounce that? And I have to say, I thought it was AVGI because they were all capital.
Yeah, well, that's just in the actual logo itself, but I saw this clip about 6 months ago about this AVG, a Greek artifact they found, a person, they put a face to it, the Greek and the Danes, and they named her AVG, as in the dawn of civilization and the dawn of creation. So I thought that was a pretty cool name. And I'm hoping that in my business, I help people with solutions for a dawn of a new day.
You were my straight man. I was just going to ask about what the relationship was between the name and what you were up to, right? So, Mark, before we get into this, you said that this has been a topic that you've been kind of thinking about a lot, writing about a lot, this idea of relationships at work. What sort of prompted this interest? What has you so passionate about this subject?
Well, it goes back actually to the very beginning of my career. I went to university to become a chartered accountant, and I was fortunate to have an excellent mentor, the first in a working relationship with everybody in my first position in the co-op through this university program. And then when I left there, I went to a business, and it was challenging. I was in a position between the owner, it was a family business, did several $1 million in volume, but I was in the position caught between parents and the next generation, and that made it quite challenging, to say the least. And there have been cases since that time as well, where there were good relationships, there were bad relationships. And I have run the full gamut, and through over 40 years of experience and 9 different industries, I've seen a lot and seen a lot of good and learned a lot from a lot of bad. And it just is something that I'm passionate about. I realize how detrimental a bad relationship can be, or bad relationships can be at work, and how that takes a toll on everybody.
And Mark, I was just kind of thinking, with your experience as being a chartered accountant, what kind of that you saw, what kind of an impact could bad relationships have on a company's bottom line?
It can affect it directly from a number of areas, because it impacts productivity at work, not just with, say, one person or a pair of people, but it can spread across a whole staff, across a whole business. It can also impact how your staff are interacting with clients, which can influence your business. If staff are angry or dissatisfied with their work environment, too often they aren't able to hide that when they're dealing with clients, and that hurts business. So it can impact the bottom line directly by sales volume or by productivity.
Now, do you see any kind of trends popping up recently that has you pay even more attention to that?
Well, this whole concept, everybody's using the idea, there's 2 terms out on the internet that are probably used the most, and one is culture and the other is leadership. And it's rampant across the internet, and that's what kind of tweaked my interest from the time that I started on Twitter and LinkedIn. And I thought, okay, maybe if I take a look at this and try to understand why things are happening, how it's impacting business, I can get a better handle on it. So I think the two things are people now, or businesses now, leaders in business, owners or those in management are starting to understand the importance of a positive culture, a positive mindset in business, and how it does impact the bottom line. And I think slowly but surely they're getting to the point where they're understanding that. And that's good to see, because I've worked for bosses that were pretty strict, pretty nasty, pretty difficult to work there. And as I said, productivity, my own sense of well-being was much better under a positive environment.
Now, I got to talk about a pet peeve of mine. And there was actually a Twitter string that went on and on about this a few months ago. You talked about leaders now recognizing how important relationships are and the impact that these relationships do have on their business and the quality of their business. But one of the things I've noticed is, and especially in the past, I'm not going to talk about today, but I tend to notice this, that no matter how much we talk about emotional intelligence and leaders who understand their employees and create positive places to work and all of these things that have been studied and realize that they have a positive impact on an organization, and yet my observation is we keep promoting like mean people who don't see things that way. Have you had that experience? Why do we, if all of this is so important, why do we keep promoting jerks?
That's a good question. Generally, they become jerks. They don't necessarily start out as jerks. Quite often, they're very successful, and they know it. And that's part of it. They have their own pride. They have their own goals, their own agendas, and they become jerks. They may not start out that way, but they can all of a sudden produce the Mr. Hyde, and perhaps don't care in some cases, or perhaps don't realize it in other cases, but it happens. I also have an issue, or will comment on the Peter principle, where managers, they're successful as they move up, and then managers or owners above them say, well, they were great in this, we should move them up. And they hit a point of management where they themselves are struggling to do the job, and they're feeling pressures from owners or senior management. And those pressures will cause people to do things and say things that they're really in their normal frame of mind will not do or say.
Now, Mark, lots of businesses in the overall population of small businesses are actually family-owned businesses. I've worked for several that have actually grown and become, New York Stock Exchange companies, right? Lots of businesses start out as family businesses, and you sort of mentioned that a little bit. And inside of a family business in particular, relationships are super important because oftentimes you've got family members involved. So what is one employee relationship mistake that you see families or business owners making maybe inside of a family business that are really, really hurting them that they should take a second look at?
Well, the business that I was in, the father had 4 children, I think, if I remember correctly, and the 2 sons were the heirs apparent. They never worked anywhere else. They basically always worked within the business. I have an uncle who has a son, and what he did for 2 years after graduating from university sent him somewhere else to work in a similar type of business, in a similar type of role, to learn what it was like. He had them start at the bottom in this other business to learn what it was like for the workers to be treated as a day-to-day general laborer, frontline person by upper management, and learned firsthand that, gee, when I get there, I don't want to be like that, because that's just not very pleasant, and I hope I'm not going to be that way. And my first cousin has taken over his father's business. My uncle just passed away in the last month, and his son is doing very well. He's very personal. He talked about being professional in business, courteous in business, friendly in business, part of the community. He learned all these things from his father, and They family businesses, the next generation needs to learn these things, not just have things handed to them and don't have any experience or care about the people that they're become in charge of. That needs to change. Having outside experience and personal experience firsthand, it just can't be ignored as far as I'm concerned, or shouldn't be.
I think that's a terrific point. Let's flip it to the other side. Now, if you're an employee inside of one of these businesses, what are some of the mistakes that employees make that make it really difficult to manage?
I'm going to say that I probably started out by making that mistake as well. When I graduated from university, I came out, I had all the courses towards a chartered accountancy certification. I had my experience. I worked in the public accounting office for over 2 years. During my co-op education, I worked another 2 years while I was trying to get my degree or certification. And when I decided, well, it was time to leave, I went into industry. Actually, a client, we had been recommending they needed a business manager or a comptroller or something like that. And when I went to him, I thought, okay, one, I've known that business because I've worked on it for 2 or 3 years. I'm going to just take hold of this, and I'm going to teach them everything, and I'm going to turn this business around, and I know everything. It took me about 3 months to realize I didn't know much of anything. I was too keen, too hard-pressed. I was pushing, and I thought I deserved this. I thought I was, I needed to move up quickly, both financially and in position, and I was impatient. But about 3 months in, I realized, no, this is going to take time. I've got a lot to learn. Some young people don't seem to ever get to that point, in my opinion. They're impatient, and I understand that. Everybody wants to move up. Everybody wants to make a lot of money quickly and retire and live a good life in Bora Bora. But it takes time. Relationships will help you through that time. And as you mentioned, the emotional intelligence, if you're showing that, then usually relationships are much stronger and better, and you will proceed on a normal course in time, unless you're in a company that uses and abuses their staff, which does happen, and that's unfortunate. That's when those people need to move on to and use their skill set and their talents elsewhere.
I like that. I like how self-revealing you were in terms of taking a moment to step back and take a look and ask yourself, what did I overlook, or what's my role inside this business? And one of the things that I hear a lot is that employees tend to see management as being fairly unapproachable. So, is this something that management creates, or is this a story that the employees create? What are your tips to management for having them be more approachable? And then what are your tips for employees on how to approach management?
The approachable issue is twofold. It's both sides, or can be both sides. It can be one or the other. It can be one thinking the relationship is good and approachable, and the other one saying, no, it's not. It's very complex. You're dealing with human emotions here. You're dealing with different goals and objectives. It's just so complex. There's really no solution except that having a good relationship or attempting to try to present to management is about all you can do. And you have to do it in such a manner that management is accepting and willing to listen to you, because if you try to force the issue, you're probably going to be met with resistance. And it's almost a sales approach that you have to take in selling your idea. It has to be well thought out. You have to have a good product. You have to go not with an issue or a problem, but with the issue and problem with a solution or something you see as the potential solution. Don't ever go to your boss and say, we got this problem, we got to fix this, without offering any sort of solution. You've got to come up with some sort of alternative or solution to the issues that you're going to approach management with. Having said this, sometimes management just is not going to listen, which is terribly unfortunate. And this goes back to Lee Iacocca's statement, where he always said and is quoted as saying, I hire smart people and then I get out of their way. You hire them to do a job, you let them do a job, you accept and appreciate their contributions, their ideas, because they're smart. that is partially, hopefully, a reflection of your ability to hire good people. But then if you have that ability, let them do what you're hiring them for. Don't keep them under wraps. Don't micromanage them. Let them produce with the talents that you recognized when you hired them.
So what should management do with bright people who believe that they have good ideas and want to have their value recognized?
Management has to keep their ears and their minds open. You got, again, because you hired good people, you want to hear, or should want to hear, what they have to say. You will get managers who are just not that receptive, and that's terribly unfortunate. We talked about managers who got there and probably shouldn't have, and that's where you get into it. Or they're being squeezed by owners for productivity and whatever. So, and cutting costs. That's one of the things these days. You were talking about jobs and making it better, but also the number of jobs and keeping your job and maintaining your job. And it goes back to, we have, with cost cutting, you're getting to the point where businesses are having to cut the numbers of people they have, reducing the size of their most valuable asset, which is their people. They want more output with fewer. That's hard on people. It's hard on businesses. It's hard on individuals. It's hard on management. It's hard on the workers. And it's got to be reasonable. And sometimes with the financial crunch and pressures worldwide on economies, your business is going to be squeezed. And you've got to try to respond the best you can under those circumstances and keep a level head, I guess, because otherwise it's going to affect everybody around you and the business as a whole, and not end well for anybody.
Now, a few weeks back, I don't know if you were in on this Twitter stream, but we were talking about the word hustle. I don't know if you were in on that conversation.
Was that a disco dance?
No, it's not. Lately, it's been this popular term that we're using about, getting a side hustle. Like, you have this job and you're doing the side hustle, and the side hustle is something that's going to bring you joy, or so on and so forth. And then we got into this whole back and forth about, maybe we're glamorizing this idea of a hustle. And, you're talking about this output of energy that's going, maybe outside of your work area to bring you joy. And, and as you were speaking, I kind of thought about that word again, this idea of hustle in terms of working smarter, working harder, hustling. But I just didn't like this idea of adding more work. I would have preferred to sort of explore opportunities to bring the idea of hustle, maybe some like creative ways of working or creative ways of building relationships, where if you have a great team that's working, you're actually going to be more productive. Does that make any sense where I was going with that?
Yeah. No, absolutely. I've been in some great teams, and we had fun, we had laughs, but we worked hard, we helped each other. It was a great experience. And it helps you focus on what you're doing by having those little breaks. You can't go to work and just work 8 hours solid with your nose to the grindstone, so to speak, and not take a breath and look around and take some enjoyment. It's just not possible. The body's not made that way. The mind's not made that way. You've got to have a little bit of release at times. And I've worked through my lunches. I know what that's like to put in extra time. I've never tried to have a second job as such, because I wanted to be able to focus on the job and responsibilities of the jobs that I've had, as opposed to being distracted. I know of people that, it's 5 o'clock, I got to be out of here because I have to go 6 blocks away and be at a business by 5:15 because that's when I start my second job. And I understand the financial needs that are required, that sometimes people feel they're required to have a second job. I feel bad for people because salaries are what they are in a lot of cases, and it's difficult. Canada's struggling with the minimum wage laws. Ontario is about to, well, I think it's January 1st this year, this coming year, go to $15 an hour as a minimum wage. It's now $14.10, I believe, or something like that. But even so, at 2,000 hours a year, that's not even $30,000 a year, which makes it pretty tough to live. So a lot of people do have second jobs, and that's really unfortunate. I get it, I understand, but it's also going to impact your primary job. Now, I also know people who have been working their second job, moonlighting while they're at work, which of course takes away from their focus and concentration while they're at their job and being paid. And to me, that's just wrong. You're being paid to work where you are. You have those responsibilities. You need to focus on that, and doing something else while you're at your primary job, I have issue with.
So let's wrap this up, Mark. If you could write the world's rules of work, what would be your first rule?
My first rule is for there to be a sense of mutual respect throughout the earth, across everybody, whether it's co-workers, workers management, management owners. You need that mutual respect and understanding of what the other is having to deal with and why maybe they are having a bad day. It's a case of maintain professionalism and mutual respect at all times, and appreciate what you're doing, get enjoyment out of it, and have some fun. You've got to look forward to going to work every day, and some of that is having fun at work or just the sheer enjoyment of what you've accomplished, what you've done, what you've contributed. But you want to go home at the end of the day and smile and say, yeah, that was a good day. I feel good about it.
Well, Mark, I can't thank you enough today. I'm so looking forward to our chat that's going to happen here in just a few minutes. And thank you so much for sharing some of your thoughts on how to navigate relationships at work.
You're quite welcome. My pleasure.